Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a profoundly personal journey together, healing from the unforgettable. We're going to be exploring the intersection of clinical science and emotional healing, and we'll use some really incredible expert frameworks to navigate the tough, often messy terrain of trauma and forgiveness.
Okay, let's dive into this. Do you define your life by before and after a deep hurt? For so many of us, a traumatic event draws this hard, undeniable line in the sand of our lives, right? There was the you before it happened and the you after. Validating that pain, that is the very first step of this whole process. You aren't imagining the weight of that dividing line. It's real. Section 1. Acknowledging your past pain. Here, we're going to bridge the gap between clinical, therapeutic research and deeply personal spiritual frameworks to help you heal.
To truly acknowledge your past pain, it really starts with understanding the mechanics of what you're actually experiencing. And through the work of clinical experts, we now recognize this massive foundational truth. Trauma literally gets trapped in the mind and the body. It isn't just a bad memory. It's an actual physiological shift in your nervous system. These essential resources you see here, like The Body Keeps the Score and CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving, they provide a phenomenal roadmap for understanding just how deeply abuse and trauma alter our physical systems.
Section 2. How trauma changes you. Let's look at exactly why it's so incredibly difficult to just move on from our past hurt.
So the crucial point is that trauma fundamentally alters our perception of the world. It changes how we interpret events and, honestly, the stories we tell ourselves about our own worth. When we look at CPTSD, or complex PTSD, we see that chronic abuse, especially when experienced as a child, doesn't just hurt us. It literally derails our fundamental development. If you've been through this, please hear this. You aren't broken. Actually, your body and mind simply adapted to survive. But right here is where we find a real pivot toward hope. The renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote this striking quote in Man's Search for Meaning. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Wow, that is incredibly powerful. We obviously can't erase the traumatic events of our past, but we can shift from being passive victims to taking active agency over our own healing. That transition, though, it requires heavy emotional labor. The reality of moving from just a clinical understanding of trauma into the actual practice of forgiveness is, well, it's messy. Forgiving what you absolutely can't forget is not some light brushstroke. It is thick, heavy, intentional work. Section 3, the forgiveness dilemma. We're going to look at how forgiveness can often feel like a double-edged sword, especially when unchangeable pain feels completely unforgivable. And this brilliantly illustrates a daily choice we face, denying the pain versus doing the hard work of healing. As author Lysa TerKeurst explores in her deeply personal work on this subject, denying the pain might feel a whole lot safer in the moment, right? But long-term, it just breeds cynicism, bitterness, and some severe trust issues. Doing the hard work of healing is incredibly tough, no doubt about it, but it's the absolute only path that actually leads to true peace. Section 4, Connecting the Dots. Let's introduce a really powerful framework from our study guide to help you actively make sense of your past experiences. To make sure past experiences stop hijacking your present, we can lean on this simple visual checklist. First up, collecting the dots. This just means gathering your past memories and honestly writing out your story. What actually happened to you, especially back in your formative years. Second is connecting the dots. This is where you link those past experiences to your current reactions. Like, why do you avoid certain places? Why do specific phrases trigger this sudden wave of anxiety? And finally, correcting the dots. This is absolutely crucial. This is where you actively identify and correct the false, awful narratives you might be telling yourself because of that past pain. Section 5, Boundaries and Daily Healing. Now we're going to focus on how we actually protect our peace and practice the daily decision of letting go. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the contrast here. Once we start correcting those dots, we have to protect our newfound peace. When we're hurt, our trauma response usually makes us want to just control the people who hurt us, right? To prevent it from ever happening again. But trying to control others is incredibly frustrating and, honestly, impossible. True empowerment comes from setting healthy boundaries instead. You can love someone or forgive them while strictly minimizing the impact their poor choices have on you. Boundaries aren't about punishing the other person at all. They are entirely about protecting your peace.
Ultimately, we must realize that forgiveness is both a decision and a daily process. Drawing upon profound spiritual parables of patience and mercy, we learn that you might make the decision to forgive someone today, but guess what? You will likely have to process the feelings of that hurt all over again tomorrow. Healing just isn't this one-time event where the pain magically disappears. It's a daily, intentional, and deeply courageous practice of releasing resentment and actively choosing peace over bitterness. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with this thought. Bitterness is a bad deal that makes big promises. It promises to protect you, but in reality, it only poisons you. So ask yourself, if bitterness is a bad deal that makes big promises, what beautiful thing could take its place if you chose to let it go today? What could your life look like if you reclaim that space for peace, for hope, and for a truly beautiful future? Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I really hope this empowers you to take that vital first step toward true healing.